chairs better than broken chairs. And with that, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome to the Driveline Academy podcast, the world's most dangerous youth baseball podcast. I'm your host, Deven Morgan, Director of Baseball Driveline, founder of the Driveline Academy, and the resident marble mouth host of this broadcast, joined as per usual by my brother, my partner, my co-host, Driveline Academy Assistant Director, Driveline Academy International Man of Mystery, Driveline Academy Most Eligible Bachelor, Jeremy Techtiel. As per usual, first-time, long-time listeners know we're just going to go straight into
the keeping of the house.
The keeping of said house. Should we switch up the order somehow? How would you switch it up? I don't even know. Look, man, we got stuff that you should probably enjoy.
You go Strider first. Probably.
Yeah, well, yeah. Well, you know what?
If you're going to switch up the order, that's what
we're going to switch it up. Here's the deal. We're going to do this for my good buddy Ryan. So my buddy Ryan Freeman, that I got a chance to connect with briefly at ABCA, although my ABCA time was limited by infinite spamming of the meeting button, which was not bad by any means. But Ryan runs a company called Strider. Strider is a digital marketing agency that has been helping small businesses and local clients since 1994, which means since like before the internet was really a thing. Ryan has been in this space, and they offer custom websites, search engine optimization, Google Ads management, and basically like they will help you manage your online presence. So if you, as someone who listens to this show in this very specific niche that we are in, let's say you are the coach of a youth baseball team, you're the coach of a travel team, you're a coach or a board member of a league, and you don't have an online presence, you don't really know where to start. Here's what you're just going to do. You're going to go to Strider, STRIDER, 4 is in the number 4, or Rappin' Forte, DL.com. Strider4DL.com. What Ryan's put together is the ability for you to get discounted rates on all the stuff that they're very good at and have been doing since 1994. I really want to emphasize that because like the internet in 1994 was...
Yeah, that is getting the jump on.
That was
early adopter.
Early adopter. Ryan, we're gonna have to talk some time about like the FTP upload sites and like the first time that you're downloading MP3s before it was like really illegal. It was just a file. Anyways, Strider4DL.com. Ryan will hook you up and get you a discounted rate on that type of stuff that they specialize in. And a small percentage of that then goes back to us for our scholarship fund, which is the thing that we use in order to have kids be able to do this thing here for reduced rates or perhaps no rate in some cases. So Strider4DL.com is a good thing that you should check out. Typical housekeeping, our good friends over at Axbat, Axbat.com, code DL20 will get you 20% off of tools for the stick and ball enthusiast that you love in your life. Perhaps that's you, perhaps it's your kid. D as in, my brain is so broken on these things. D as in dishwasher. L as in laundry. Dishwasher, laundry. 20 will get you 20% off.
It's the cleanest we've ever been on this podcast.
It absolutely is. Just because we're the most dangerous youth baseball podcast does not preclude us from being clean. So yeah, Axbat.com, code DL20, dishwasher and laundry 20 will get you 20% off over there at Axe. They got game bats, they got training bats, they got all sorts of training accessories. They even have a uniform builder. Again, that's not part of this thing, but it is a thing that you should be aware of because you should go support our good friends over at Axbat. Other than that, Skills at Scale Complete Youth Baseball Training Manual, you could be part of the second 1,000 of people that have bought it because the first 1,000 have already out the gate. Number 1,000, we shipped that guy off a hat and a cap and signed the book and did some other cool stuff. So hopefully that was appreciated. Youth Power Bats, Youth Unload Smash Bats, man, we're coming into springtime. Here's the simple thing. Your player is going to perform better in the spring if they move the bat faster. That's just a fact. And for the low price of $99, because the tariffs haven't hit yet, and look, that's just a thing that was probably going to come to pass, your player can start swinging with a training bat that's actually designed for youth players, and it's not comically overweight, and it's not going to jack up their swing. We really should just do, I should just put out the charts that we have from when we did the study, because, look, I'm not going to be shy about the fact that the biggest player in youth bat speed training is a company that makes wooden bats that are just like hilariously overloaded, inappropriately so for youth players. And I can tell you because we have the data, and I will just like throw it out on Twitter for our socials. What happens is when the swing weight or the moment of inertia measurement is too high, kids go to swing, they lose control of the barrel, they dump the crap out of it, and then they have an excessively positive attack angle going into the zone. Now you're slicing up through the zone instead of cutting down into it, like our good friend Alex Rodriguez might suggest that you should do. He's wrong, he's a liar, but I digress. It's just not helping, man. And not only is it like hilariously overloaded to the point that you're not really engaging in the research-proven principles of ballistic training. Shout out to D. Renee or any of the other foundational research you might want to read on the topic. But it's also creating bad swing adaptations. So your boy weaponized, 400 some odd game bats. We have their youth-specific game bats in our database, all measured in terms of swing weight. Came up with some custom swing weights for appropriately overloaded weights relevant to the bats that kids are swinging, and that's our youth power bat. You can go get it for $99. Youth unloaded smash bat, I'll make even more succinct because it's simple. It's very light, so you can move it really fast. That's a good thing. It's also a very skinny barrel, so you have to move accurately while you're moving fast. This is good hitting. This is Ted Williams 101. I don't know what you want to call it, but it's a $79 training bat that you can basically swing our smash factor balls, hitting plyos, mini hitting plyos. I think minis are definitely probably the best training configuration. You can swing it with regular baseballs, soft toss, overhead flips, that's fine. I'll be honest about the fact that if you use it with regular baseballs, you get a little bit of off axis, you probably are going to get a little bit of a stinger. Maybe that's effective training stimulus, right? Maybe
Stinger doesn't happen if you hit it flush.
Babe, that's just a fact. But with the right training tools, now you just have a very skill forward and immediate feedback driven training environment anywhere, on a field, in a gym, in a garage, up against a wall. Don't blow up some plywall and then blame me, or drywall and blame me. Don't do that. But $79, and you can find both those things at drivelinebaseball.com. Shout out to my brother Warner, who is calling me while we're recording the podcast. Warner, I will call you later. Okay. All right. So we got through ABCA. We are a week away from our Academy College Showcase.
Yep.
The thing I wanted to talk about today, and as per usual, I've given you no prep whatsoever
Nothing.
because that's just how we roll over here. I wanted to talk about how we help kids deal with poor performances. Because I had an acute example of that, again, with my own son last night. So we'll set the stage. We're getting ready for the college showcase. That is next Sunday. Right? This coming Sunday. Not next, right?
The one he's throwing in is on Monday.
Or I'm sorry, on Monday. Yeah.
Okay.
Anyways.
He'll be there Sunday and Monday.
Yeah.
Bring him both nights, but
Yeah.
the one he's throwing is Monday.
No, I got it. I got it, Coach. And leading up to that, we spent this whole time training where kids are working off the mound 3 days a week, but without a batter in the box, right? Mm-hmm. Because, we are trying to build up workload, get them through a velo phase, maintain that workload. Mm-hmm. And now that we're getting closer to competition, now we're getting into live batter. Mm-hmm. So 2 weeks ago, he went live for the first time indoors. Sat 85, 86.
A week ago Monday.
Yeah, a week ago Monday. Sat 85, 86. Actually ran it up to 89, which was pretty tight.
It's tight.
Sunday, so 2 days ago from today, we usually, again, loyal listeners know that we typically record this on Monday. It's a Tuesday. I saladed our department meeting schedule. Your boy caught. Hey, man, sometimes you're just going to catch some L's, and that's fine. So Sunday we had our on-fields, and we're doing machine pitch scrimmage, so we get a chance to get the defense some consistent looks because the pitching is consistent. He tried to run out at least one full speed sprint all the way around the bases because we were trying to run into and out to finish an inning. Which was hilarious. And some on field throwing as well because he's position playing. So then goes live yesterday, and was again once he gave up one barrel, and he was 83 AV4 ish. Gave up one barrel, and then everything from that point was 85, 86, which is hilarious. And he was missing, not by much, but he was missing. He didn't throw as many strikes as he wanted. And really felt like it's this weird thing with the turbo sinker that he's throwing now where it moves a lot. Mm-hmm. And as a 15-year-old kid who is, look, we can talk about his training age and all this other stuff, but he's still 15.
Yeah.
He is learning how to control that thing, which is very different than down regulating and with this presumption that like sometime inevitably you're just going to get this stimulus where you get good at moving fast. And again, loyal listeners will know this is a topic we have beat into the ground, proverbial horse glue, as we like to say. So he comes off the lawn last night, and during that session, I know he was frustrated, and I could tell he was frustrated. But I think the first thing that that I actually complimented him on when we got in the car was, "You didn't melt down." And I was trying to be generous with him when I was talking about it in the car, and I was like, "Look, man, think about where you were 2 years ago, and if that same thing had happened." And he was like, "Dad, even if it was a year ago, I would have melted down." And I was like, "Aha." But he got done, and we ended up, I was walking back, and he was getting ready to hit, and then he was like, "Dad, can we talk about this?" And I was like, part of me was like, I want him to go get his rounds in, but I was like, all right, if you're asking me, then sure, let's sit down and talk. And he was like, I hate sitting with this. I hate sitting with, I feel like I didn't do as well as I wanted to. And we started, I'm the glass half full guy, right? So I'm like, look, it wasn't like you had big misses. We're small, like you're just missing in and around the zone. High school umpire, maybe you get more of those calls, right? Like that can happen too. But I was like, look, you had an on-field scrimmage yesterday and you ran all over the place and the velo was still there. The peak wasn't there, but like the average was still generally there. It's your second time off the bump, and the misses are small, not large. And I was like, for him, I'm trying to explain that there's two ways that you can frame this exact set of circumstances. One of them is inherently, I didn't do the way that I wanted to. I can't sit with that because that's just not in my nature. And then kind of nothing. Like that's just kind of where it resolves. And I was trying to get him to go to the other side, to my side of like the glass half full. And we talked about it briefly, and I was just like, it's up to you. Like the circumstance isn't going to change. We don't have a time machine, so it's kind of up to you for how you want to frame this moving forward. So then he went and got some rounds, goes and gets his lift in. I lift. We get back in the car to go home, and we're driving, and I was not going to bring it back up. We were just going to shoot the S about whatever. And he goes, just out of the blue, he was like, "Sometimes I think bad days are a good thing." I was like, do tell. And then he starts talking about how he was just like, I'm not glad that it didn't go the way that I wanted it to, but somehow in the last like hour and a half since we had talked briefly, he was able to kind of turn the page and think about it from that framework. So I thought an interesting thing to talk about today would be, he has that capacity now as a 15 that's about to turn 16. He did not have that capacity at 10, 11, 12, 13. So I think what we could do is kind of talk about, from a coaching standpoint, like, what are the tools, what is the way that you're trying to frame this, and how are you trying to frame it for the younger kids who don't necessarily have that tool? And how do you try to build that foundation to eventually get them to learn how to turn the page themselves?
Yeah. I mean, it's incredibly loaded. If I had the answer to that, I think I'd be really rich.
Sure.
But like a couple of important things, important pieces of context that I gave Danny, as well as maybe some that I left out. But a week ago, he threw in... and this is going to be inside baseball for those of you who've never been at Driveline, but we have 6 cages, and then we have our lab in kind of tucked away in the back in the corner.
Yep.
A week ago, he threw in one of the middle cages. Last night, he threw in the lab.
Yeah.
Very different environment.
Yes.
You're removed, you're separated. It's a very different environment. That we have no idea how big of a role that played, but I'm guessing it didn't play no role.
Sure.
Just like being in a more isolated environment where it's quieter, the focus is more on you. It seems less like competition because there's not a bunch of guys standing around the cage watching. He faced the same 3 hitters for 6 at bats. I think he went through. I think he got through 5 or 6 at bats.
Yeah.
So like, and it's the same guys he faced last week because we have the showcase. The kids who are hitting in the showcase are getting priority to hit live.
Yep.
So technically your 4th at bat. Actually, his 3rd at bat was his 2nd time through the order.
Right.
So like they just saw you. Like he just saw that. That might work in a game.
Yeah.
When it's gone 4 innings.
Yeah. And
right. But he literally just saw you.
And you had a great point about that when you were sitting behind him last night, where you were like, and I think Levi was who's one of our youngest players that's going to be on our 16-18U mix. I'm just going to put it out there that I think he might be the best, 14, 15-year-old kid in the state.
Pretty good.
Just hit a ball 100.4 last night.
Baseball.
And then this isn't just like a sellout for max EV, like the way that it gets demonized.
No, child can hit.
Yeah. Very, very, very hitterish. Yeah. Like very hitterish.
Gifted. He's a gifted kid.
Yeah, and I think you had a really great comment to D last night about that specific thing. You were like, in relative to the sequence, right? Because there was this kind of debate back and forth about, okay, am I going to throw him the slider? Am I going to throw him the heater?
Right.
And you were to like helping him work through that thing. And I thought that was so fantastic. If you want to get deeper into that,
because I try not to. I try not to like tell them what to do because they're going to play a lot of high school baseball, and like I'm not, I can't make that many mound visits, right? Like I need them to understand. Like this is the time I have to understand that. So like, I was sitting behind the pitchers last night, and we were talking sequencing as we're going through it. But like one thing, and I'm not throwing your son out to the wolves here, but like your son plays MLB The Show.
Yes.
Some amount of MLB The Show.
Yes.
And like when he sequences, that's in his head, and that's a good. I'm not saying that's a bad thing. It's a good thing. MLB The Show. You can like have a 5-pitch sequence and know how you want to get this guy out, and like you're probably going to execute all 5 of those. Mm-hmm. If you're like, I'm going to go fastball, slider, sinker to put this guy away, and then you miss with that first fastball.
Yeah.
Are you going to stick with that plan?
Yeah.
Or if you miss with that first slider, are you going to stick with that plan? Like, this isn't a video game.
Right.
Like, you have to read him. Like, don't pre-plan and he did a lot of pre-planning, which is fine. But then he is a kid who, like, if my plan doesn't go according to plan, now I'm going to get frustrated.
Yeah.
And if he hadn't planned that out beforehand, a lot of that frustration probably doesn't exist.
Sure.
That like I didn't have as good of a day as I wanted to because he had a vision in his head of MLB The Show strike, like like sorting guys on a slider away every at bat.
Sure.
Because I'm going to set him up that way, and then I missed with a sinker and Levi puts it into the gap.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, you're gonna miss. This isn't MLB The Show.
Yep.
Right, and like you have to be able to like rebound and stick to, and very similar to your approach to the plate, right? If you're sitting on a heater 0-0 and you take, or your approach is, I don't want to swing anything that's not a heater middle up before there's 2 strikes, and you get a heater middle up on the first pitch and you swing and miss, your approach shouldn't change.
Right.
That shouldn't have any difference on your approach. If your approach is, when I get to 2 strikes, then I change.
Yep.
All the time it does.
Yeah.
All the time. Immediately, especially the younger they get. I'm frustrated, so now immediately, like, my plan is gone. My approach is gone, and now all I am is frustrated because I didn't execute perfectly the whole plan I had, and now that whole plan is out the window, and that it doesn't have to be out the window.
Right.
But in a lot of cases, especially younger athletes, the whole plan goes out the window, and like, you can just see in the body language, then the plan is no longer in the window. And, like, when... No longer in the window. No longer in the building. It went out the window. The end, the very last pitch was the longest probably debate that me and Danny had over what pitch he should throw.
Yeah.
Because his honest answer was, I have lost confidence in all of my pitches.
Yeah.
Right? And he was missing barely.
Yeah.
But he's like, I want to throw this slider low and away off the plate, and I missed middle in.
Yeah.
Or I missed somewhere else with it. So, like, I no longer have confidence in that pitch.
Right.
Dude, he swung and missed on it. Like, it might not have been exactly where you wanted to put it, but, like, he didn't hit it. So why have you immediately lost confidence in that pitch?
It's kind of the definition of, like, the shapes there. In not, like, a non-sarcastic way. It's like, hey, you missed your location, but the shape, like, truly is there, and you got the result that we're trying to optimize for, which is swings and misses.
Right. And like, this isn't, like, don't fall into the gambler's fallacy of thinking that, like, I missed my last one, I'm going to miss this next one. Because then, yeah, man, you are never going to trust anything if, like, the first batter doesn't go well. But, like, I think a lot of this, and I don't think you expected me to go here with this, but, like, a lot of it had to do with somebody else who had a really bad day of practice yesterday. Not just your kid. And that was the kid who was catching him.
Yeah.
And, like, that matters. He was frustrated back there. Mm-hmm. And, like, you can feel it.
Yeah.
You can feel it as a pitcher when your catcher's frustrated when your catcher's not performing the way he wants to.
Yeah.
Right? He told me he felt like it was the worst day of practice he ever had at the end of practice. Right? And, like...
Yeah, I talked to him about it a little bit, too.
Yeah, and, like... this is not an easy thing, right? But, like, at some point, the two of them calling time and... Hey, man, you're doing fine back there.
Yeah.
Like, you're doing fine. Like, relax. You're doing fine. And, hey, your pitches are there, right? Like, the shape is there. You're just missing. But we're not working together, right? It's two frustrated people throwing to each other.
Yeah.
And, like, there's no resolution there. And a lot of the resolution came when he got back out of the lab and into the normal flow of practice with the rest of his teammates. And that's what your teammates are there for.
Yeah.
This is an individual game played in a team setting. You are going to have a ton of individual failure, and the only way that you're going to continue to go and do this thing is by having the team support system around you when you fail.
Yeah, because
otherwise this is golf.
Yeah, because like on a field, you have those moments where like really good shortstops will they're going to go talk to a guy. Like they'll bring them both together.
Even just being around your teammates and having context.
Yeah.
So like Danny being upset that Levi barreled a ball into the gap that, Danny threw at 83, and then all of his pitches after that were like 85, 86. And like, I don't know that this happened, but like very possible he goes back and they're talking about, what happened in live ABs? And he's like, I did this. And they're like, you barely missed with an 83 mount. Like, cool, you throw 83. Like, right. And then immediately he's like, this is stupid to complain.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, you're right. I wasn't that. And like, when you have a whole team and the defense behind you, it's gonna feel a little different, and you have to do work as a coach and as players to make it feel like that, even when it's not. And so, like, make sure that support system is still there, even if we're in, to use a parent's old phrasing that I still can't get out of my head, in a very sterile environment, like the HP lab. Or the HP lab, like the Launchpad, the lab, that you're still getting the team support when you aren't performing as an individual like you'd like to.
Yeah, so I guess the interesting question there is how do we teach and how do we empower kids in their own, because it is like it's its own community, right? There's the team, which includes the players and the coaches and the parent, and the community also is the parents or whatever. But like that subsection of just the kids, how do we do a good job of teaching them what it looks like to be able to provide that support? I mean, is it really just like behavior modeling?
Yeah, because kids don't listen.
Right? So they're just kind of pick. So I think that's one of those things.
They listen to an extent, right? But like it's behavior modeling.
Right. So then the critical piece for, the topic du jour today, right? About like how do we help younger coaches and younger players start to learn what it looks like to turn the proverbial page? Mm-hmm. I think the first thing we're landing on is the necessity for coaches to lead by example that way and demonstrate to kids what that looks like, right? Like we talk a lot like this idea internally at Driveline, like can't teach feel. And we kind of say it as a joke, but I think a lot of times we're very serious there. Mm-hmm. And like we had a practice last week where Robbie, a younger player on our 16U, 18U cohort, got like a backup slider that didn't slide. And it came in on him, it took it off the handle, and we were doing mixed pitch at the time, right? And again, Levi, who again I'm going to say with my whole chest is one of the best 15-year-olds in the entire state. Levi was the one who was feeding mixed pitch. So Robbie gets his backup slider, runs in on his hands. He's kind of rattled, and And you could tell he was a little bit gun shy in the box. I don't know if you noticed this, but Levi gave him nothing but four seamers for the rest of that AB.
Too nice.
Well, and that's the thing,
Yeah.
right? Like, and I said to,
But like, you got to know the kids, right? Like,
Yeah.
Robbie, and this is like where the coaching part comes in, right?
Yeah.
Robbie, a kid you should challenge.
Yes.
Like that is the way he responds best.
Yeah.
Is by like directly challenging him.
Yeah.
There are other kids to bring up a very similar situation. The kid throwing before yours on Monday hit a kid in the face.
Yeah.
With a fastball.
Yeah.
Shout out Joel for standing up and saying ball two. That was tight. But like,
Yeah. R.I.P. his C flap.
R.I.P. his C flat. But like, hit a kid in the face, and then with a fastball, and then that was ball two, and then immediately he steps back in, slider.
Yeah.
And now, and he walked him.
Right.
And it's like, hey man, you cannot shy away from your fastball. Like, I
Yeah.
know you don't want to hit your teammate again, but like, you got to treat this as much like a real game as possible.
Yeah.
These are, if we're only ever trying to make each other comfortable, we're never going to get better.
Yeah.
Right. And it's like, if there's, and this happened last night, right? Like, one of the cages was like a filthy sinker, like an absolutely filthy sinker. And the other cage was mixed pitch with less filthy pitches, but it's mixed. So that the point of it is more swing decision as opposed to like, this is nasty, go hit it. And there were kids that were only staying in one of the two cages.
Yeah.
Don't be a coward.
Yeah.
I know you don't want to go in there. The only way you're going to get better is by going into that cage, right?
Yeah.
But to bring it back to PCA, there's a time and a place, and you have to know the kid. There's no point in shoving the kid into that cage in that situation with if like you look at him and it's clear his emotional tank is empty.
Yeah, and to me, when I saw Levi go all heater for the rest of that AB, my perception was just like, okay, let me help my teammate restore a feeling of safety that allows me to then compete.
Yep.
And then the next round, we're going to go full mixed pitch again. And it's just like, yeah, man, I didn't say anything to Levi about that. I don't think you said anything. I don't think Dan, I don't think Compsack, I don't think Kozak said anything about it. Like, that kid was able to infer.
So, honestly, he's treating others how he would want to be treated.
Right.
In that situation is what I fully believe he was probably doing without even really understanding what he was doing or trying to do it. He's just like, if I took that, I would want just to see fastballs like right down the middle the rest of the time.
Right. So is so much of this, is it just, again, so now that's kind of the same thing about, it's the golden rule, but it's a taught and an inferred thing when coaches treat players like that, and then they get a chance to see their players treat each other that way.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
like, the frank, honest truth is, like, Danny's upset with that he doesn't like sitting with that stuff. Mm-hmm. Good. You
Right.
shouldn't like sitting with that stuff.
And
What are you going to do about it?
Right, and that was one of the things I said to him before we got in the car, really immediately afterwards. I was like, because I think when he thinks that I'm trying to give him the glass half full, that I'm kind of like trying to invalidate some amount of his feeling of frustration. And I got that at one point. I was like, okay, bud, I'm not trying to tell you don't have every right to feel the way that you want to feel. I understand.
I need you to feel that way.
You should.
I need you to feel that way.
You should.
The second you lose that, we're in trouble.
But the
How do we
finest,
channel it?
right? The finest line that I think is so tricky for kids to navigate is, how do you channel it appropriately in a way that it doesn't turn into, the way that I've talked to him about it is like, you don't want it to be definitive.
Yeah.
And I think that actually even gets back to what we were talking about sequencing, right? Mm-hmm. Is, he was in a 2-2 or 3-2 count, and it's like, we're having this debate about slider, fastball, what's your best? And he's like, I don't feel like I trust any of them. And it's like, okay, well, we're going to go to war with something. We're going to go to war with something. So you need to kind of like, instead of go, well, I've missed with the fastball and I've missed with the slider, therefore I don't trust either. It's like, those failures of those pitches in those situations previously, they're not definitive.
Yeah.
It was a thing that happened, but it's not a prescription that it's always going to happen.
Right.
But I think the tricky part when kids have an inability to contextualize this stuff is when they get the other thing, right? This failure is definitive. It defines something about me, and that definition makes me feel uncomfortable.
Yeah. All the way up to 40-year-old major league players. you fail, you get pissed off. The second you stop getting pissed off when you fail, whether it's striking out or hitting an absolute missile right at somebody, the second you don't get pissed off about that is the second you should probably hang it up and not play baseball anymore.
Yep.
But like, how do you channel that in a positive, productive manner? It's extremely difficult and rarely consistent. Right? Like, there are some days where he might be better at channeling that than other days.
Yeah.
There are some situations, like yesterday, he told me before, my velo's a little bit down today in warm-ups, and I'm like, I don't care. Like, are you feeling fine? He's like, yeah, I ran a bunch yesterday, and I'm like, slightly lower today. I was like, okay, that's fine. That's good information to know. But, like, as long as your command is there and the shape is there, you can still get people out with that.
Yep.
Like, go work with your B stuff. And he was totally fine. Then he gives up a double in the gap and he gets pissed. And what does he do? He channels it and starts throwing 2 miles an hour harder.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
Great. Okay, but then we're just missing nibbling off the sides of the plate, and he can't channel it the same way.
Right, because it's not a...
It's a different type of failure.
It's a different type of failure.
Now it's not, I threw a pitch and he hit it, so he has some stake there. It's I'm not hitting the spots that I want to hit, so now this is like on me, the failure, or whatever. But what I'm saying is, it's not, their ability to channel it is not consistent. And it's very dependent on the day and how they slept and what happened at school. And sometimes they're really able to contextualize it and say, and like channel that energy in a positive manner. Sometimes they're awful at it. I have athletes like Noah is not a bad example of an athlete who like is literally always upset with his performance, even when it's good. But I don't think I've ever really seen him channel it in a negative way.
Yeah.
Like, he is really good, and he's just a consistent kid overall, like mature kid. But he's really good at channeling it positively, getting angry and bearing down and focusing more.
Yeah.
There are a lot of kids, and it differs fielding, throwing, hitting.
Yeah.
Like, there are some kids who they get angry and hitting, they start, muscling up.
Yep.
And you're never going to hit the ball.
Well, in the worst way, but that compounds on the hitting side is like you get an AB in a game in competition, doesn't go the way that you want, and then you just have to sit with it.
And then you got to sit with it.
Like, you don't get
That's
right.
part of this game.
That's
right.
and it's the most challenging thing for kids. I think a lot of times on the hitting side is first, like, hitting is just hard.
Yeah.
Hitting is hard first of all, but then when you have whatever that failure is, a failure of approach, failure of outcome, failure of output, whatever.
Yeah.
And then you just have to sit there.
You can go and watch interviews of any old baseball player, and they'll talk about homers they gave up.
Right.
Or like times they struck out. Like, this guy really had, like, you don't ever forget it.
Oh yeah.
I mean, you keep that with you. You sit on that for the rest of your life, probably, if it's like that, actually that mad. Yeah. Like that frustrating to you. That's okay. I'm okay with that.
Yep.
We can't let that dominate our thought. We have to be able to either channel that or compartmentalize that.
Yeah. And I think one of those things, I think in youth baseball, that's like, it's a very simple tool that's often ignored is AB doesn't go the way that you want it to. Kid has to come back in the box. They're going to have to sit with it for a while. Mm-hmm. You have like 10 seconds with that kid on the way in to give them something. Yeah. And the amount of times that I've seen kids walk back into a dugout and like the coach, again, as coaches, we want to win, right? You don't want a coach that doesn't want to win in some way, shape, or form. The mechanism by which you win is up for consideration, but I digress. When I see coaches in the third base box, kids walking back into the dugout, and the coach is doing one of these.
I mean, what I was going to say is,
like, that stuff is brutal.
I've literally never been in the dugout when any of my kids came back from an at-bat, because I'm coaching third.
Right.
So I am relying, because I normally don't even have an adult in the dugout, I'm relying on them to pick each other up.
Right.
And that doesn't happen if you don't pattern that behavior for them.
Right.
Like, in a lot, like, and I'm not saying I'm perfect at it. There have been times in my dugout where there have been not actual fights, but like some chesting up of each other after frustrations. And like, that's a thing that happens. It happens. It's okay. And like, as long as like the underlying thing is like the whole team supports each other, like there are times when, and especially when you get a group of kids that have known each other for a long time.
Yeah,
they know,
they
hey,
build-
you know what? It's not even worth me talking to him right now.
Yeah.
Like he's not going to listen. He's not going to hear me.
Yeah.
So like I'm going to let him sit at the end of the bench and stew, and I'm going to give him a half inning, and then I'm going to go over there and yell at him.
Yeah.
Because I know I've known that kid for a while. I know that if I try to go up to him right now, it's not going to help.
Yeah.
If you're a kid in that situation, and you strike out, and I come up to you, you don't want to hear anything I have to say because it's either. What's the correction? Which you're still mad that you struck out, so you probably aren't going to hear
listening.
that.
Yeah.
Or it's, hey man, I'm going to try to contextualize this for you, and you're not ready to hear that either because you're still mad that you got out, and you're just like you just have to. It's like me when my mom tells me I'm special. You have to say that. You don't have a choice.
Sure.
Like you have to tell me I'm special. You don't have a choice, man. Like I'm in your lineup.
Yeah.
Like you have to tell me. You have to try to contextualize this and pick me up, and it's just less impactful than like your teammates going over there.
Sure, but
and the longer you know each other, the teammates have a better ability to have that feel and
Sure.
pick each other up like that.
Sure. I mean, but I will give you a lot of credit. Like I don't even know if you realize how many times you'll just like kids walking back into the dugout and you'll give them a little bit of something. And,
Yeah.
And I think the thing that I think about sometimes, again, specific to this conversation and how do you pattern that behavior is that even if Danny's walking back to the dugout because AB didn't go the way that he wanted and you give him a little bit of something, even if he's not able to listen there, that's still behavioral modeling for the other like 10 to 12 kids in the dugout.
Sure. And
You
part
know?
of that, honestly, I don't know if this was a long time ago, but when the Sixers were going through the process, they put out a
Shout out to
report.
Sam Presti.
They put out a report that was like, we're going to try to, and they're like the worst team in basketball. Like, we're going to try to high five more. I'm like, what?
Yeah.
It's like, all the research shows that the teams that high five more are better. And it's like, well, correlation versus causation. They could be high fiving because they're just better teams. Sure. But like, I always thought that was the stupidest thing I'd ever heard.
Yeah.
That like teams that are like, obviously teams that are good high five each other more.
Of course.
They're good.
They have
so they're
more reason.
happier about their right. Like, yeah, if you're bad, you're not going to be high fiving each other or whatever. But like that is literally always in my head.
Yeah.
That just like teams that are good high five each other. And so like even if one result doesn't make you a bad player, doesn't make you a bad team. So I do feel like I have to get in there. Otherwise, like that's a pervasive thought, and then they all think they're and it's a self-fulfilling prophecy at that point.
Yeah,
If we think we're bad, we're bad.
I mean, I actually just threw something in our Academy Slack, the random channel this morning. It was just like a little clip from somebody's podcast, and I don't have the research link to what they were talking about. What they were talking about is this idea that they ran a study where they basically had two groups of basketball players, and one of those basketball players one of the groups of basketball players, they give them very specific instructions during the game. We want your mental process to be derived or to be revolving around execution, tactics, choices, strategy, all of that type of stuff. And then they had another group where they said, hey, we want your mental process and your self-talk to not be relative to strategy, situation, choice, but just like gas yourself up. Just gas yourself up. And it's like, now of course my pre-Parkinson's brain is forgetting the name of the linebacker who's he's a NFC guy. He's like one of the best dudes in the last several years. There's this clip of him in a playoff game, like a minute and a half of just like unrelenting positive self-talk. This is what you trained for. This is what we're here for. You're going to go make a big play. It's like, and anyways, relative to this clip that I posted in this study, that group that had there's just the positive self-talk, not strategy, not choice, not that stuff, way outperformed the other group.
Mm-hmm. And like that, to go back to the last pitch that Danny threw, that's what I was trying to get.
Yeah.
Because he's like, what do I throw here? I was like, whatever you're most convicted in.
Yep.
It's like, well, I think I have to throw a fastball. That's not what I said.
Mm-hmm.
What are you most convicted in? Well, nothing. What you can't not have any conviction in anything.
Right.
And he talked himself into being convicted in the fastball.
Yeah.
He missed with it, but he talked himself into that conviction.
Yeah.
Now, honestly, I don't know that Danny is someone who's capable of like that level of positive self-talk.
Yeah.
Because I think he would think he's bullshitting himself. Sorry for swearing. But I don't think he would, like, you have to have I don't even know that this is like a thing you can learn, but like you have to almost go like out of body.
Yeah.
And try to like talk to yourself as a different human being. And like, that's a that's a really difficult thing to do. And I feel like if Danny were to like try to really overly positively self-talk himself, he would still have like a piece in his brain that'd be like, what do you, this is ridiculous.
Well, so.
And like most of not just him, but like most of the kids on my team, like I think they struggle with like the over the top self-talk. It's really difficult to talk yourself into believing something.
Yeah.
If at your base, you don't necessarily believe it, it's a skill to be able to actually talk yourself into it.
Oh, it's
especially
for sure
in the heat of the moment. Like if you're on a mound, like if it's something else and you have like time to persuade yourself, that's one thing. But like talking yourself into being confident is a really difficult thing if you don't deeply feel that confidence.
Well, so one of the other interesting things that did happen at ABCA is that I ended up talking to Billy Wagner a lot. And we get to talking about stuff, and he was just like, he's like, do you know that like I was so nervous before every game, like every one, like I'm throwing up or like he's like every time.
Yeah.
And he was like, there were other guys, and he dusted off the name of some like mid to late 90s, MLB guy that, as a man of said age, sure. I was like, oh, of course, I haven't heard that name in 20 years. He's like, I look at some of these other guys where they could just be free and easy all the time. I was like, I don't understand this. And it was one of those things where when I got back from ABCA, I immediately was like, okay, Dee and I have to have a conversation about this. Because I know... Look, I've joked about the fact that, my life largely revolves around, anxiety and guilt and some version of those two things, and that's kind of the motivators for me. I don't love the fact that I might have passed some of that on to my son inadvertently or whatever, but I wanted him to know that, like, it's okay. Mm-hmm. It's okay, and I think that's I'm not sure how, but I know that that's related to this larger conversation.
That's the most important part of it.
Yeah,
they don't feel like they should be upset.
Right.
Like they're upset with being upset.
Right.
And it's like once they understand that like that is okay, then okay, now we can find a coping mechanism.
Yes.
But if you still think it's not okay to be upset, then we can't even have a conversation about a coping mechanism because you're trying too hard to not be upset.
Yeah, and like,
embrace it, accept it.
Right.
And then we can use it.
Right. And I've look, I'm not saying by any means that I'm good or great or even effective at like trying to help my own kids go through this stuff. Because one of the things that I was trying to say last night to Dee earlier before we got into the car and he had the revelation that like, yeah, sometimes it's a good thing to have a bad day. I was like, look, man, the high school coaches that you want to impress do not give a crap about this event. The college coaches you want to play for someday do not give a crap. The pro coaches that you dream of being able to perform for someday, they don't care about what just happened today. So the thing that matters is like how you contextualize it, right? Because again, if a Billy Wagner is gonna have a bad day, and not just one, right? It's like it's implicit in the endeavor. The tricky part is how do we help them get to understand that like it's okay to be nervous, it is okay to have bad days, and the thing that kind of differentiates is how do you respond to them? Right.
And the most, and like, I feel like we've definitely said this in the pod, but this is the be curious, not judgmental.
Yeah.
Right? Like, why are you so upset with that outing? They're probably going to give you a reason that you can then utilize to like refocus them back. Right. And just letting them know that it's okay to be really upset about that. Yeah. Like, we can't just like stew on this forever. How are we going to move forward? But like, I worked with a big leaguer who used to douse himself in cologne before games.
Yeah.
And I was like, why? Like, why? Legitimately. Like, this makes no sense to me. And the answer was like, I smell confident.
Let's go.
And it was like, when I make an error or when something bad happens, I just smell myself.
Let's go.
And like, I smell, like the smell makes me confident. It's like, all right, man, you actually, he's not a Hall of Famer, but he probably should be at some point. But like, oh no, well, he never will be actually.
I think I got an idea.
You can go look who I've worked for and figure out about the context of what I'm talking about. But like, yeah, that guy is a really, really good baseball player, and he has to do that.
Yeah, yeah.
But your 15-year-old should be good at doing this? No.
Yeah, it's a skill.
It's a skill that the first step is, and this is like a a first step that goes on for years, that is never fully there, and that you constantly have to keep reminding them. But it's okay. It is okay to be really upset about that performance.
Sure. And it's also, and I think the other thing you can extrapolate for that is it's okay to kind of go like off the board a little bit about finding someone that's going to put you back in a place of confidence. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, I would offer that like if it'd be really interesting to have that guy explain the genesis of like where that came from, because that's not, it's not Ted Williams, taking naked swings in front of a mirror, right? That's
no, it is probably
it's kind of out there.
Some form of memory and smell are very, very tied together. So it's probably some sort of memory that makes him feel confident when he smells that.
Yeah.
And immediately, I'm resetting myself.
I can't wait until this podcast is over because I want to ask you because I have a guess.
But it was like fascinating, and I was like, I legitimately can't make fun of you anymore. That's okay. But if that guy needs to do that, of course that a 16-year-old needs to have a mechanism to reset himself and understand that all right, it's okay to be mad about that, but I can't be so mad that it gets in the way of my next at-bat, my next opportunity, whatever it is. I can stew on this, but I got to reset. I have to compartmentalize this. I have to focus this. Whatever my mechanism is, I got to figure that out, and I got to do it and be consistent about it.
Yeah, which I think is probably a third thing that we can kind of define here as a strategy that coaches can employ, which is understand that a kid can have a poor event in the game, but that doesn't necessarily have to describe the entirety of said game unless you allow that thing to spin out of control. Right?
And
this is like a bad first inning, but bad first AB type of thing, right? How do you course correct off of that?
And I am very lucky that I don't even have to do that much at this point to get to know these kids.
Yeah.
I really have to do nothing to get to know these kids. Some might argue that I should get to know them less well. But it's a very different task if you're a little league coach with a new team every year.
Yeah.
Or a high school coach with a mostly new team every year, right? You have to really make an effort at the beginning of the season early in getting to know your players and what makes them tick.
Yeah.
Put them in situations that they fail.
Yeah.
And then ask questions about where their head is when they're failing.
I mean, and
try to figure that out.
It's funny that you said that because I think in my previous experience as a board member in a league, we always had the perspective of we didn't want to have these what you call them legacy teams, right? Like a team that kind of gets formed when these kids are 6 or 7, and then they stay with that same coach over and over and over and over because there's concerns about equity of talent distribution, right?
And it's not wrong, right?
And it's not wrong, but I think one of the things that, I probably under-indexed for was that exact thing that you just noted, which is if you don't allow for these type of legacy teams, it means you really have to compress the amount of time that coaches have to get that type of buy-in. And in a little league environment where you often don't have leagues providing a flat structure for how they're going to train their coaches to deal with that stuff, much less the baseball side of things. And I would put this type of stuff like the relationship building with the kids, building trust, building community, building communication. That's a separate thing from writing out a lineup.
Oh, for sure. And to me, that's first because a lot of the other stuff matters a lot less or is less impactful if you don't do that piece first. And I have put myself in a situation with this group of kids that it's only a couple of new kids each year.
Yeah.
For me, the couple kids that are added to the group that I have to do that work with. And honestly, last couple of years, all of the new kids that we've added have been at Driveline for a while, and I've known them.
Yeah.
So it's not like I had to start from scratch or whatever. There was basically one kid this year that I had to start from scratch with, and there was one kid last year.
Yeah.
And it's I'm really lucky, and I understand that.
Yeah.
And it is a much different position to have to take time to do that every year. And the best way to do that is by putting them in situations that they're likely to fail in and figuring out how do they respond to it.
Well,
and then asking questions about their response.
Yeah, and in the if I'm picking up what you're putting down, the one player that was added to your cohort is one where, and I don't want to use his name because I don't want to put this out, but I think there was a little bit of concern that he was a little bit selfish,
Oh, for sure.
right? And it's been really interesting to see.
This is the problem with legacy teams.
Yes.
Right? Adding one new kid to the legacy team, and now it's, oh, you're the outsider. We're going to...
Yeah.
And it's like, it takes... And that's on, in a lot of cases, almost all the cases, me, to make sure that, like, the group is open.
Yeah. To bring in somebody new. But it's been really interesting to watch over the last... I don't know, probably the last 2 or 3 months.
Just get used to it.
Yeah, like him starting to get a little bit more comfortable, and the kids, I don't know. It's just it's a process, like it's a real process.
And to be fair, and we're not going to mention names or anything here, but like in in this particular case, and this is like relatively common in the state of Washington, people love to make fun of kids who play at Driveline. Especially if you go to, I won't name them, but certain organizations, people love to make fun of and poke fun at school and whatever, and
yeah, our kids have told us that,
for lack of a better term, shit talk our kids. We get that a lot. This kid had been a culprit, of that over years past, having known some of our kids.
And then
it takes legitimately a special level of humility.
Yeah.
To then, after I've done this, and it's either a special level of low self-awareness or a special level of humility. It's one of the two of them, to then insert yourself into that situation.
Yeah.
And like, hey, I've made fun of you for playing for this team for years, but like now I'm here.
Yeah.
Like you are putting your barrier down, and that's a really vulnerable thing that he did, and like, yeah, the response wasn't immediate.
Yeah.
But like, 2 months in, now there's no issues there, but like, it took time for me to get to know that kid and what makes him tick and how to converse with him. And like I don't think most of his teammates are even there yet. Of like, when push comes to shove in a game, if he fails, what's the best way to pick him up?
Yeah.
Right? We've got enough kids who know how to pick each other up that like, you can literally watch, and I enjoy when we're in the third base dugout, because I'm close enough to the dugout, that I can hear the stuff that is said.
Yeah.
And I know it's stuff that I have said.
Yeah.
And that's the pattern matching, right? Like they're literally like, it's like stuff that I have said, and it's like, yeah, man, if you don't know what else to say, repeat what I've said. That's great. Like this is my goal, that I have a dugout of kids who think like me, right? Like terrifying, but kind of my goal. And you have to get there with each kid, but you have to get to know them. You have to ask questions. You have to be curious, because every kid thinks in a different way.
Yeah.
And like, it's actually not that hard once you actually get to know them.
Yeah.
To like talk to them in the way that they need to be talked to, and like, for certain kids, let them stew for 10 minutes on their own, because like, if I approach you right away, this is not going to lead to anything positive.
Yeah. The thing that also, like, maybe we're just kind of taking this as a foregone conclusion, but it just kind of occurred to me that like maybe we need to be very outright about this. I think this might be part of the benefit of training in an environment where there is going to be a lot of failure.
For sure.
Like, cause that kid, when he first joined us, he probably never trained with the amount of like machine work that we do. Right.
It's either one or the other.
Yeah.
It's either a benefit or it is a massive negative.
Yeah.
There's no like middle ground of this.
Yes. And I've because I'm around a lot, I've saw him struggle early. And I think there was a period of time where I was a little bit worried that this environment was going to be productive for him relative to his capacity to kind of deal with that failure. And then I watched yesterday, yesterday in one of our constraint cages, he was working through his drills, and he finally started to figure out like contact depth and like where he really wants to be. And we had a quick conversation at the cages, because he had a really good round, and I was like, okay, so this is part of the thing. I don't know how we're gonna. I'm glad that we landed here. There's been a lot of conversation lately by morons about the detrimental effect of training with data, and specifically the hit track system. And I've had people who I am surprised at their inability to understand the benefit of said system and this feedback loop that it presents to kids. And there's all this just like really reductive commentary about like, well, if it seems like the kids, they're unable to focus. Like they're not focusing on me as the instructor because they're looking at the screen. Consider The screen is giving them information that they can weaponize that you can't.
Right. Be more engaging.
This is not the tool's fault. This is the tool handler's fault.
Right.
So this kid last night, he has this really good round, and I was just like, and he finishes, and I was like, hey, I don't know if you saw this, because he isn't a kid right now who takes a look at the hit tracks.
And I'm not negative on hit tracks, to be clear, but who's got the hit tracks whiplash?
He's not one of those kids. And I was just like, hey, when you're anywhere from like 6 to 12 inches in front of the plate in terms of your point of contact, you catch barrels, dude. You catch barrels. His outright ceiling is not quite where we want it to get to right now. I mean, he hasn't hit a ball 90, but like he's getting close.
Right.
And I was just like, just so you know, sometimes when you don't get what you want, you're making contact really, really, really deep. And what that ends up being is kind of a heat check about whether you're on plane or not. So it's not that it's necessarily bad to be able to make contact out there, but for you, you're maximizing your batted balls when you're able to kind of be in this point of contact. And he was like, oh, that's cool, right? So then he comes over to me, apropos of literally nothing, while we were lifting. He was like, Coach, I was just about to PR last night. Weaponizing feedback.
And he did PR last night.
Yeah. No, I'm sorry. He did PR, but he didn't hit 90 yet.
No, he was.
And it was just like.
He was very close.
But I mean, so again, I think one of these things where we're talking about how do you condition a more positive response from kids when they meet failure. Failure is inevitable. It's implicit in our game. One of those things, to get really, really hyper-specific, beyond behavior matching with coaches showing kids the right way to go, beyond the kids inferring from that, beyond putting it in some type of context, being able to weaponize the feedback that you got from that failure is a whole other thing.
Right. I think people probably don't understand the best use case for the hit track scenario because, like, I would posit that most people using hit tracks are straight entertainment.
Straight entertainment.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And they're not. They don't even have, because you can customize what's up on the screen. They probably don't even have the point of contact screen that's up on there, right?
That was literally one of the people. So somebody popped off and made this incredibly inflammatory statement about throw the hit tracks away. It's eyewash. Blah blah blah. That person, and I'm not even going to give you the shine that you want because you've already gotten enough attention from me. He was like, well, the real issue I have with that system is it's inadequate at the tool of developing major league hitters because it lacks batted ball spin data. And it's like, fine. Like,
so don't use it for that.
Then don't use it for that.
Hey, this hammer is really not good for screwing the screw into the chair.
Big shocker, dude. So like you did the thing, right? You said an incredibly inflammatory statement. You got the engagement that you wanted, but it turns out you don't really even believe in the thing you said.
Right.
You actually just believe that, like, well, batted ball spin feedback is so valuable at the MLB level that I don't feel comfortable training without it.
And like, I literally hear the kids in my dugout. Someone will hit a ball hard in the game, and then the conversation in my dugout is, "What was the exit velo? What was the launch angle?" And then inevitably, someone tries to come up with a distance measurement, and somebody else is like, "Hitrex doesn't pick up spin. Like you don't know what to do distance wise." And I'm just like, "Yeah, a bunch of 15-year-olds talking about spin and distance in the dugout, you bunch of nerds." But like, they understand that. Like they know what to look at the screen, and they know where to pull context, and they're not looking at numbers. Like there are times where I'm like, "Where's this number on the screen?" And they have no idea because they don't even look at it.
Right.
Great.
Perfect.
You look at the things that I've told you to look at that you pull context from. You take a swing. You know I can turn around, get feedback from these two things. Great. Now I'm turning back around. And it helps you adapt the swing to swing. It makes you better at making adjustments in a game. Now, I'm not going to sit here and say that there isn't a point where you become too reliant on it.
Sure.
Or that I haven't told kids, you're not allowed to turn around and look at hit tracks this round. If you PR, I'll tell you. Mm-hmm. Like, just be a hitter. Stop trying to find a place in the outfield on hit tracks and just like focus on the task at hand. Like there's a time and a place for that too, but like the thought of not using a tool because it's not perfect is crazy.
Or because you can't direct the attention to the stuff that they're going to actually be able to weaponize and get better from.
Well, so my question back to that guy
would
would have been, okay, then what do you use to train?
Right.
because, like, what's the answer? Like, if it's not a hit tracks, you're not using a Rapsodo if the reason is because it doesn't pick up batted ball spin or to the quality of a major league hitter. So, like, my guess is you're probably just, like, using iSoto and going based off of, like, ball flight and whatever. And it's just like, yeah, man, you just invalidated your own argument.
Correct.
Because, like, I agree. It doesn't do that one specific thing. You're not doing that one specific thing in your training anyways.
Right.
So use the hit tracks.
What difference does it make?
Right. Use the hit tracks.
Yeah, and I think, again, the larger point to kind of bring this all back to what we started talking about is whatever the event is, right? If it's a competition event, if it's pitching performance didn't go the way that you wanted to, ABs didn't go the way that you want to, what feedback can you direct that child to that, again, allows them to channel it?
Yeah.
Right? And I think one of the things, to bring it all the way back for Danny is that, like, I was like, look, man, your misses last night weren't big. They were small.
Right.
Small misses.
Right.
So, and I said to him, okay,
And
well.
hitters that know you very well.
Right.
Like, they're not going to expand their zone.
Right. So, expand those two ideas. And is there a way that you can frame this thing as a positive instead of a negative, as like a declarative and not a definitive?
Just be curious, ask questions,
Yeah.
try to figure out what their thought process is, and then you know where your in is based on what their thought process is.
Yeah.
If you're just trying to, like, assume based on what you would think in that situation or what other athletes have thought, you might be right. More likely than not, you're not entirely right, or you're just wrong. And, like, you're wasting time when you could just ask a couple questions. And, like, most kids after a couple questions will realize where you're going.
And that's, man, honestly, like, that's one of those things when I think about when I was a younger, much stupider coach, I don't think I did a good enough job in. Like, when I think about some of the experience that I had coaching my own kid for a lot of years and some of the emotional stuff that went with that, I mean, I think I said on the pod sometime this year, we were just having some random car conversation at one point in the last year. He was like, Danny said to me, he was like, do you realize that I thought that there were scouts at, like, my Little League games? And I was like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
And he was like, yeah, no, I thought that there were scouts there. That certainly wasn't a thing that I ever said or amplified in any way, shape, or form.
And that's such an easy thing to be like, that's so goofy. Like,
Right.
Of course there's not scouts here. And, like, then, barrier broken down.
Yes.
Right? Like,
yes, but I didn't do a good enough job of being curious enough to ask these type of questions. Right. So and I don't know if this is a place we want to end or if you've got more, but I think it's one of these things where it's so obvious. It's so obvious to just ask questions, right? Try to drill down about what is it about this poor performance? Like, why is it emotionally affecting you, right? Is it you're just upset because you have a higher standard for yourself? Okay, cool. But why? But why?
but why? Right.
And if I had asked that question to D when he was 10, when he was 10, we were in the our Little League, our end of season championship, and he was playing majors against 11s and 12s. He comes on to close out a game for us in the championship, and gives up a fly ball directly at my left fielder, clank. Pop up directly at my shortstop, clank. And, like, just the whole thing spiraled out of control, and he got really, really upset. Shout out to a Little League umpire who blew a double play call at second. I came out to challenge, and then was like, yeah, no, you're right, but it's fine. Anyways, Dean, I'm
Is
never
he
going to
wrong?
forget that. I'm never going to forget that. Never going to let that go. But in that moment, if I had asked more questions and I had been more curious about, like, okay, it's after the game, competition's over, I know that you're very upset. Why? Well, I wanted to perform better. Okay, why?
Yeah, why?
Well, Dad, there were scouts there.
Right.
I probably was just like, I'm 2 questions away from asking the right thing,
Right.
where I can then go, hey, buddy, you know what? That's actually not really a thing.
Yeah.
It's really not a thing.
Yeah. And, like, honestly, part of this is, like, and I've heard you talk about it, so I know you're in a relatively similar position. But like, all of my children out there are better at baseball than I ever was.
100,000%.
And like, so I don't assume that I know what they're feeling.
Yeah.
Man, I maybe I threw a ball 80. I have no idea. We were tracking radars.
Yeah.
Right. Like maybe I hit a ball 90. I could not tell you. What I can tell you is like I look at them and I'm like, you're way better than I was at that age.
Yeah.
Like you're clearly better than I was. So like I don't know what you're feeling.
Yep.
And I don't want to assume it. So like
Yep.
I'm gonna ask questions. I know how I would feel in this situation, but like I'm not you. So like I'm gonna and like Ted Lasso. What a great show.
I know.
But like I think people take that show for granted as just like a silly comedy when like there's no truer story about what coaching actually means.
Yeah.
The guy didn't know the sport.
Yeah.
And was able, and like obviously it's fictionalized, and he was like that team is probably not actually winning, but like the idea of it has nothing to do with X's and O's, and it's about the culture you build and the trust and in that building, and like how willing they are to fight for that and go out and battle together. Like that matters a lot more than X's and O's. It's not the only thing that matters, but like you're gonna beat teams that are really good at the X's and O's if you are better at being a team.
And everything that entails.
And everything
right?
that entails.
Yeah.
And like that's what that show is about, right? It's a goofy, silly show, but it's like no, like he's coming in here and he's building a culture.
Yeah.
He's building a community, he's building trust, and he's got all these like, separate pieces and egos that he has to handle, which isn't all that different from like coaching youth and like different types of kids that you have to handle. And like if you get them pushing all in the same direction, that is that's worth way more of your time than trying to get them to execute mechanics perfectly.
Right. So again, come all the way back to the behavior modeling thing in terms of the adults in the equation. You could be a youth baseball coach who is convicted that like winning is the only path for you. And I've said my piece about that. I'm not going to regurgitate it again here. But even if that's your perspective on the endeavor, I would make the argument strongly that if that's the thing that you care about most, then you want to weaponize this type of culture for your team, which is very different than hardo coaches that criminalize every failure that children make on the field. You're literally pushing yourself away from the outcome that is so important to you by the mechanism in which you conduct yourself.
Right. And I don't think any of my kids would, I think they would all tell you exactly how competitive I am and how much I want to win. I don't think that's hidden at any point with them. But they also know that like that isn't like you don't have to. It's not mutually exclusive.
Yes.
You can do both things.
Yeah.
Like you can really want to win and also understand that that's not the most important thing. And like that's where the sweet spot is like if the kids also really want to win and also are able to contextualize that and understand that like it's not the most important thing. And then they pick each other up and because. Yeah. There's nothing you can do if you invest this much of your time, your energy into something, and only one team gets to win, and it's not you. You can't hide from that feeling.
Yep.
You can't pretend it doesn't exist. All you can do is learn how to live with it and how to utilize it.
Correct. And I'll give a very acute example with the other person that I made, or my wife and I. I didn't forget about you, honey. I know it wasn't a one-person endeavor. My daughter, as a senior, has had her senior year wrestling season and her senior cheer season taken away because of injury. And that flippin' stinks. It stinks that she has 2 herniated discs in her back. And like it's just right now, it's the intention is like, okay, well, we could try to rush and get back for state. More that you do that, the more likely you're going to have some type of setback that's going to further affect you down the line. So right now, it's just getting ready for the stuff that she has going on in college. But obviously, dealing with it, it was hard. Like it's really, really, really hard. And I think one of the first things that I said to her was like, look, I never have had to deal with this. Right. So I have to your point, acknowledge a little bit of a lack of perspective on my side. Like I know what it is to be injured, you know, like
It's grief.
Dude, it is.
Like people write it off because it's not like the worst grief that you're going to feel, but like
it's there.
It is grief.
It's there. And like, look, as an old guy, I have an acute example right now. I can't bench press, and I haven't been able to bench since August. My shoulder's jacked up. I have to go like just bite the bullet and get imaging. So a couple of our trainers here, we're going to have a bench press competition. I'm pretty convicted about who's going to win, and he's going to win with a 335 bench. Dude, was repping 315 before I went on this stupid trip, came back and did a guerrilla workout at a hotel in Seaside and wrecked my shoulder. It is grief. It is for sure grief. And what I was trying to tell her is just like, look, I can't tell you to not grieve because that's real.
Right.
And we as a family, she as an athlete had a very different intention of like what this was going to look like. And like, she had senior night, senior wrestling night last week. And we had spent so much time talking about like, because they let the kids have like a little like walkout song. Like it's a little professional wrestling-ish. And we had spent a lot of time talking about that. And my daughter's afflicted by the same musical taste that I have. So she has like this vast library of stuff she could pick from. She's like, I don't know which one's the right one, yada, yada. And we went to senior night and she couldn't wrestle, But what I told her is just like, okay, well, what was the point of getting into this in the first place? The point is that this type of competition, this type of physical competition that's in your face and you can't escape it was something that she wanted to engage in because that's a part of her personality. And she wanted to cheer because that's another part of her personality. There's part of her that wants to be a girly girl and wants to do all the cheer stuff. And she, like, her favorite thing about cheer is not performing. It's the stunts and all the cool athletic stuff because, again, that's what she came up doing. But she wanted that duality. Like, I wanted to be able to be like a psychopath on the wrestling mat and go compete that way and then also go have cheer. And now because of this injury, like, all of these things are invalidated. But I was like, but they're not. Right? The way that this story is going to be told if we're 5 and 10 years in the future, the fact that part of her senior season was lost in both these endeavors is a footnote. The thing that's going to carry and the thing that's pervasive is like, well, who else in your high school's history ever did that? Anybody? No, actually, no. Who else? What other girls hit a legit over-the-fence home run when you're still playing baseball in Little League, in our Little League? And I understand it's our crappy little neighborhood Little League, but she's the only one. Yeah. And I was like, kiddo, you got to understand that like we don't have a time machine. We don't have the ability to pull these unfortunate circumstances back. But we do have the capacity to frame them in a way that's beneficial to us. Right. And to your point, what we talked about a while ago, like how do you challenge it? How do you channel it? Right. And do you have the ability to go from AB number 1 that didn't go the way that you wanted to channel it correctly into AB number 2? You get lit up in the first inning. What's it look like when you go back out for the second? Right? And I think a lot of this stuff, shockingly, kind of comes back to us as adults or parents or coaches or figures in these kids' lives giving them tools and techniques to resolve context. Jerry Butler, I know that, we were doing like the $5, the take a shot every time that we say ecosystem. I think context has got to be our new word for 2025. That it's going to be taking a shot for it. Because ultimately I think these kids are, they need to be taught how to resolve these type of situations. You can look to Positive Coaching Alliance and talk about, mistake rituals for flushing it and dusting it off, yada, yada. That's something I think you have to address is you want to give them something that's like it's an actual mechanism. Yeah. But beyond that, weaponizing that 5 to 10 seconds you might have with a kid to give them a little bit of context, which serves the dual purpose of telling the rest of your team how they should model their behavior, finding the right time to engage with the kids so they can be receptive to it, certainly not doubling down on criminalizing failure, because that type of culture is not a culture that's even going to get you the type of performance that you want out of your team. It's the exact opposite. Yeah. And if you do those things, man, I think we're just inherently setting kids up with some tools that are going to work in the game that help them to work through these inevitable failures, and hopefully that bleeds into other forms of their life.
Yeah, it almost always does.
I mean, again, with my own daughter, she was having a tough time yesterday, because just because I said some stuff about, hey, we can put this in proper context, that doesn't mean that she's still not dealing with these stages of grief about the injury.
Right. And you can't rush that.
That's right. So yesterday it kind of ramped up on her again. We talked through it, and she was, you know what? I'm going to brag on my kid. She sent me a text, and she goes, da-da-da-da-da. Come on, where is it? We spent a lot of time talking about college rooming yesterday. She goes, okay, guys, we are channeling this anxiety into productivity, so I need you to help me think about this. And I said, that's my girl, let's go. And then we spent, probably a couple hours just like talking through the positive way that we can frame the next phase of her athleticism. So, look, man, it's just you can't under-index for the necessity of having parents and coaches and people in the community to kind of talk them to get through this stuff.
Yeah.
They need some tools. They need some behavior modeling. It's like when we had Travis Snyder in here. I think that, one of the things that just like stuck with me from that conversation, you can find that the pod probably, 10, 15 episodes ago. Restoring some emotional safety is a real thing that has some real value. And, telling your kid I love you right after they just like beefed it, maybe not be a thing that they want to hear in that moment, doesn't mean that you don't necessarily need to say it, but you're going to have to keep saying it.
That's one of my favorite things that I hear from umpires is, did you tell your kids you love them? It's like, yeah.
You're damn right I did.
Yeah, yes, I did.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's kind of weird. It's like, all right.
Cool.
Yeah. Like, I've heard it like probably a dozen times.
Yep.
Over the past couple of years. It's like they'll be close-ish to the pregame huddle, and they'll hear that, and they're just like, what? It's like, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't have anything more impactful to say to them.
Yeah. And if that sounds weird to you, then watch a kid fail in a big moment and then see what happens, and you tell them that you love them no different.
Yep.
Give it a try. You got anything else?
Nope.
I got nothing else. Yeah. Strider4DL.com. If you need a website, you need some SEO, you need some marketing, talk to our guy Ryan. Axpat.com, code dishwasher laundry 20. I'm not actually dishwasher and laundry, DL20. All the other stuff, drivelinebaseball.com. Typical stump for Driveline Academy Flex. Longitudinal training, doing the academy stuff. You want to come in for the snapshot. That's a 90-minute biomech assessment for youth players that we have, and also the Power Hour available in Arizona, in Washington, and in Florida. Come in for a free hitting session. We'll show you how this Driveline stuff goes. He is Jeremy. I'm Devin. We are down by law. Catch you next time. Thanks. Bye.